immortal? How?
You said it yourself, bitch. We're the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Hello and welcome back to A Stark Contrast, where we discuss the differences and similarities from Marvel Comics to their MCU counterparts. And we are your hosts, Geoffrey
and Dai.
Hello, welcome back. Bro.
Dude, how happy are you that they sound exactly the way that we interpreted it in the Hawkeye episode?
They sound exactly how they look, and they look exactly how they sound.
So if you hadn't caught on, we're just kind of reminiscing about Hawkeye, considering at the recording of this episode, we're about 2 episodes deep into the show, with a third on the way, which is kind of crazy if you think about it, because that means it's a mid-season finale. Already.
I'm kind of sad it's only 6 episodes, but I mean...
Yeah.
It is what it is.
But hey, we still have 4 episodes to go. Like, think of it as the glass half full scenario.
I mean, already in love with, like, everybody. And Kate Bishop.
Yeah,
Haley Steinfeld.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, looking forward. And then,
So yeah, there's going to be much more about that. And then, as a kind reminder, we didn't cover Kate Bishop yet, but she'll probably come in the new year. Once the series is done, we can really revisit her and the character and where it looks like they might be taking her character in the MCU. Aside that, as far as news goes, I mean, I just went to San Diego Comic-Con Special Edition yesterday. Which blew my mind, because I was like, oh gosh, I forgot I had a 3-day pass to begin with.
Oh my gosh.
And I get it because I'm a professional. I'm registered as a professional. So it's a comp.
Okay.
So I got to take a friend, and so we went down and just for the day and kind of check things out. And it was so crazy because it was like the blip, a convention during the blip. Because usually there's tons and tons of people just spilling into the streets. Now there was barely a tumbleweed, you know what I mean?
Oof.
But it was still full for all intents and purposes. It was a full convention, if you will.
Yeah, but for what it used to be, it's not the same.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with the special edition version, which is apparently just a pared down version of the show, where it's just like, it has the dealer's hall and you can buy stuff and there are a few panels, but there's nothing too big. And, like big guys like Marvel and DC were not there. So the big booths were gone. But it was a nice little chance to kind of feel like how normal might be moving forward. And everybody was super respectful and of each other. And the cosplayers were like, I applaud that commitment, because all of them were masked up and they incorporated it into their
costumes,
their costumes in some way.
Great.
So so cool. But I didn't buy anything too crazy. I just bought Hawkeye's first run, 1 through 4.
Nice.
From 1984, I believe. That's about it. It was pretty good though. But one day we will take you. We will go. And I can't wait to see your senses overload.
Oh, I know. Probably. Because I always watch all the recap videos on YouTube.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. I always watch the Hall H stuff, and then I keep up with it on Twitter.
Yeah.
Just because it's such a mission, a thing to go. So I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I really would have to prepare myself just to even go.
Right.
But yeah.
Oh my goodness.
One day.
But today, friend, we're here to discuss a character. But right before we get into that, I wanted to just give a welcome to new Patreon patron, the Arachnerd. Thank you, the Arachnerd, for your patron stuff.
Exactly.
Yes. So thank you for joining our crew. We appreciate it. And what an episode to come into. That said, as always, we're not experts. We don't claim to be. We're just talking about a character that we love. MCU comics. Let's go. Drop us a comment if you have any comments, I guess.
Yeah. Anything.
All right. That said, today's character study is the one, the only, PETER QUILL, Star-Lord.
One of Dai's favorites.
One of my favorites. You were supposed to go, who? But that's okay. I forgive you. Yeah, no, but he's totally one of my favorites. And like in modern comics, like, this is kind of like an Eternal scenario where I sort of knew this character. Like he was kind of there before the movie. I was just kind of like, yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
The guy he looks like an owl sometimes. He has this helmet thing, whatever. And I wasn't super deep into him. And of course, like, with these more obscure characters, it wasn't until the MCU version that I was like, you know what? I'm gonna jump into that.
Yeah.
And even before, like when they had announced the property was becoming a film, I was like, okay, now's the time I need to go back and do it. And so I dove into, I believe, which is a 2012 series, 2012, brought by Brian Michael Bendis. And we'll talk about all that a little later. But do you have any idea how old this character is? Peter Quill himself? Or did he kind of does he come across as like a newer one?
I mean, off first like assumption, I would think like, oh, he's like a newer, character. But I don't think he's like, I don't think they're like, Captain America, Spider-Man old.
Right, yeah.
I would say, if I would take a guess, I'd say late 70s, early 80s.
Perfect, because that's exactly right. So Peter Quill, as we know him, Star-Lord, was created by Steve Englehart and Steve Gann, whose first appearance was Marvel Preview number 4 in January 1976.
Ooh, okay.
And speaking of Marvel Preview, this is one of those rarities where I'm pulling something out from my actual comic book collection because I don't have, again, this is a scenario where I don't have a collector card for him because there was this weird era of this character was not mainstream. So he wasn't featured. And so instead, I bring to you the exact comic book that I just mentioned. So I have his entire full...
It's a big stack, guys.
But these are also larger format. So these are... Yeah. These are like a weird wide magazine stock. But this pile is the exact run of Star-Lord's first appearance in the Marvel universe.
It looks so dope.
It's so
vintage.
Crazy. I love these for that reason because it looks vintage, right? And so this is his very, 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 very first. The crazy thing about these books is that the covers are color, the interiors are black and white.
Oh, okay.
So it's super duper old school. So as you can see, it's very like space pop culture of the era.
Yeah,
With the lady like strewn about at his feet, and he's blasting
big
stuff.
70s vibes.
Right. But it's interesting because you look at him and he has a certain energy to him as a character, right? He's not quite the Peter Quill that we know.
All I can hear from these is just synths. Piano synths, like, is all I can hear from these.
Yeah, right. It's so crazy.
That's hilarious. Yeah, that's so funny.
We're looking at number 10. It's a very it's very niche art for the turn of the decade into the 80s, where it's just this damsel in distress and the dude saving all the things. And so, looking at, we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but this is the final issue in which Star-Lord made his appearance in this iteration. But we've got a lot to talk about with it when it comes to this character, and I didn't expect to write as much as I have in my notes. Just before Jeff got here, I decided to kind of put on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 to get my brain going. And like I said before, I mean, I don't want to jump ahead, but I swear that is like one of the most solid movies in the MCU, hands down. And also, it's like 7 years ago, which is kind of
2014,
crazy.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Still holds too.
And it still holds. Yeah. It's so good. So as I said, we're going to talk about Star-Lord. Interesting fun fact right at the top of this. Star-Lord was not hyphenated, which is kind of funny because it's hyphenated here on the cover.
It's covered though.
It's covered. Well, here.
Okay.
But in the actual issue, they regard him as Star-Lord as one word. So it's a weird discrepancy. I don't know. It's weird. I don't know.
All
But
right.
yeah, it's one of those little things where he was called the Star Lord.
Got it.
And then it kind of changed into Star Lord. And
Okay.
that was just his name.
Nice.
But yeah, so his origin is quite different in the books.
Okay.
Like all the basics are there. Meredith Quill, single mother, birthed this baby, and what have you. But in the books, like I mentioned, the title was actually in black and white as far as the art goes. And so I'm going to give you a little sneak peek of this, Geoffrey. And so
Okay.
it's very black and white, very very dense as far as we're talking about the text. So I believe Steve Englehart himself was kind of like really big into astrology and all of that stuff.
I see that.
Which is kind of where all the cosmic and planetary aspects of this character come from. And it's also there are some curse words in the
What's
book.
your profanity?
There's profanity. And for 1979, you're kind of like,
Pretty bold. Yeah, it's pretty bold.
yeah, and so the story in the books is very much like, okay, it's a farm, it's remote, it's sunset on Sunday, February 4th, 1962.
Okay.
So place that versus, if you will, James Gunn's interpretation where it starts out with, the song bleeds in and it says Earth, like 1988.
80, yeah.
And you're just like, okay, so immediately there are differences in decades. Like the time frame is very different. So of course, like the happenings of that moment are different. It's treated a bit different. So in the books, this guy, Jake, is this other person in these panels with Meredith and baby Peter. And so he basically goes on a rant like, that kid doesn't look like me. I know he's not mine. And so basically he's a jerk.
Okay.
He says in just a page worth of panels, like he didn't take her to the hospital because he knew it wasn't going to be his baby.
Yeah.
And he wanted to kill it the minute it came out.
Oh my God.
It's brutal. And
Jeez.
so he goes out, he grabs this hatchet and he's about to kill the baby and he has what we assume is a heart attack and dies. And the baby rolls off onto the ground and is just staring up at the stars. Very like...
Oh my gosh.
I know, it's so dark.
That is really dark.
It's super duper dark. And, the rest of the book goes about just showing Pete when he's young and how Meredith kind of suffered from that from giving birth a bit because, she wasn't treated in the hospital like she should have been. And that then made Peter kind of like lanky and pale and what have you. So he always stood out. And so, it's interesting when you think about the James Gunn version where he kind of comes across as like, not necessarily a weak kid, but like a kid that would get picked on a little bit.
Sure.
And he even says that, he's got the black eye. And she's like, baby, you've been fighting again or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does he say, Jeff?
Oh,
Do you remember?
My God. It's been a while. At least for the intro scene, it's been
I just watched it and I can't even quite pull it together. So it's like kids were beating up like the frog poking it with a stick or something.
Something like that.
Yeah.
All I can think about is just her saying, "Take my hand, Peter."
Yeah, I know. That's all you
about.
can think about. I can't blame you. And so, you kind of get right off the get-go, like, okay, so he's been very reliant and he has this connection with his mother. It's very much a mother-son bonding. And so I wanted to read something via Wikipedia from Steve Englehart about this book and this character, because we do kind of jump from one decade to one much further away. So what he said, he basically reflects on the character because early on, like speaking of these books, by the end of number 11, for instance, this little paragraph in the corner here, which basically says, a novel-length science fiction spectacular in the tradition of Robert A. Heinlein, I believe is how you say it, who is basically an author of like choice science books in that era.
Oh, okay.
They basically used his name without asking.
Nice.
And he put a stop to it.
Of course.
And that was the end of Star-Lord.
Rightfully so.
Yeah. So it was they slapped with a
Cease and
NDA,
desist.
cease and desist. Yeah, there you go. And so Steve said this about the character as a result. I conceived something very large. My hero would go from being an unpleasant, introverted jerk to the most cosmic being in the universe, and I would tie it into my then new interest in astrology. After his earthbound beginning, his mind would be opened step by step with a fast action story on Mercury, a love story on Venus, a war story on Mars, and so on out to the edge of the solar system, and then beyond. But after this earthbound beginning, where I established him as an unpleasant, introverted jerk, I left Marvel, so no one ever saw what he was to become.
Aw.
So it's kind of like, when I first read that, I was like, I kind of get those vibes in MCU. Quill. In that first scene, in the first scene with Barit, you kind of get the idea that he's not exactly like a typical hero.
Oh, no, of course.
He's not like the greatest guy in the world.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like very self-serving.
I got that for sure, yeah.
Yeah. And so I just thought it was so crazy that that's the idea that Steve had in 1979, 1980. Mm-hmm. And that really carried through, even with other people touching the character and changing him in ways. So unfortunately, like many characters in the Marvel Universe, Star-Lord kind of faded into obscurity over the years with a brief resurgence in 1982, where I believe they republished his debut issue, but in color.
Okay.
So that's cool.
Nice.
But in all honesty, I believe it wasn't until 2004 that they actually brought him back.
Oh.
So it was like 25 solid years.
Yeah.
That's a long time if you think about it, right?
Wow.
So that said, depending on where you're doing your research on this character or what you're looking up about him, some sites will say that Marvel Preview number 4 is his first appearance, whereas more modern ones will refer to Thanos number 8, March 2004, because that's where we actually see more to this character, which I have a screenshot for you. I wanted to show you. Ooh. And so when I was hunting for this issue yesterday at Comic-Con, I couldn't find it. So I'm looking for that, just in case anybody wants to help me out. But yeah, it's really interesting. So this is what he looked like, and I'll post this on social. Believe it or not, this guy with the quad bifocal thing, that is Peter Quill.
Interesting.
And this is his first appearance in that Thanos book.
Yeah.
And so it's funny because in the Marvel previews, he's kind of more like the MCU version, if you will, where he's kind of blondish, reddish and whatnot. But then when he comes back in 2004,
it's just this completely different person.
Right.
Yeah.
Although I will say that this little thing reminds me of the guy at the trade-in shop in Guardians 1. Oh. With the weird wisps and the crazy brows. Yeah. I was like, oh, maybe Gunn. And I wouldn't put it past James Gunn to do little Easter eggs like that. But so essentially what had happened to Peter over time is that he got, like cybernetics were implanted and he lost his left eye.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so that's kind of the state of him. And he's much more gruff. He's much more like focused and serious, right? Mm-hmm. But then, of course, as time goes on, he loosens up a bit. And then you see him in, what is this? I believe 2007, where he gets a normal eye implant. He looks normal. So he technically still has a cybernetic eye.
Oh, okay. But it's just regular looking.
Yeah. And this is more of like a Peter Quill that we're familiar with. So going into the nitty gritty of his origin after, this black and white edition, again, he was raised by Meredith and as well as her best friend, Lisa Chang. So the rest is, as you know, like he loved space. He's into NASA. He likes music. Yeah. He always hoped to become an astronaut. And then he had like this weird fascination with aliens. He wanted to are aliens real? Oh, aliens are so cool, right? Okay. Until he's 10 years old, or 11. I think he's 10, maybe 10 and a half. And aliens land at his home.
Okay.
And they're of the Badoon race. and they kill Meredith.
This is literally the game.
This is the game. And so, yeah, so last time we recorded, I lent Geoffrey my PS5 version of the new Guardians of the Galaxy game, which is basically what inspired me to to pick Star-Lord.
Yeah.
Because I desperately needed him to play it. So I was just like, please play it. And which is basically what I do with people and something that I love. I love bomb the people that I love with things that I'm loving. And so I'm just like, Geoffrey, take the game and play it, please. And so you've gotten to this part.
Pretty far.
Yeah, he's gotten pretty far into the game. No spoiler there, but when you play the game, it starts out with Peter Quill as a young man. And so this is very similar in that you get to know Meredith Quill. You get to know that she loves her son. They have a very close relationship. But unfortunately, she is taken down by these aliens. And so, his perception of aliens changes immediately. That's kind of like a kid that loves dogs until they get bitten by a dog. Sure. And they're like, dogs are the worst. Yeah. And so, he begins to kind of cultivate this hatred for aliens. And so, after Meredith's passing, he's an orphan. He becomes an orphan, and he goes from home to home, and he's never quite taken by a family. But Lisa Chang remains in his periphery, and this was a more modern story introduced, I want to say 2009 or 10.
Okay, yeah.
Because he's had several solo stories, and over the years. But so these are more of the origin bits that they added after the fact, but before the film. And so. Yeah, so Lisa's kind of mentoring him because she works at NASA, and she works at a NASA ops launch facility here in California, which is kind of awesome. Yeah, which I presume is the Vandenberg Space Force Base. They never say it, but it's NASA. Yeah. And so what happens is that Quill is visiting her one day. God, I haven't even read this since it came out, but he's visiting the facility. And he just hijacks a spacecraft and goes. And he's like, bye. And he leaves Earth. And then it isn't until much later, like I just mentioned, around 2007, where the Annihilation Conquest arc takes place, which is where we see this version of Quill, where he's gotten the prosthetic eye and all that stuff. And it's the more familiar version that we know. And that one in particular is... introduced by Keith Giffen and drawn by Timothy Green II. So yeah, and I don't know if any of these folks are familiar to you, this Guardians team, but can you figure any out?
I was literally gonna say that. I was like, oh, it looks like Gamora because green, but oh no, I think that's Mantis. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Crazy, right? It looks like Captain America.
I know. At first glance, it looks like Captain America, but this is actually, let's see. Oh, Shandar is not in here, actually. Bug. This is Bug. Okay, that's nice. A mask. It's a mask, and then Mantis, which is kind of funny. There's two insect people. Yeah. This is Deathcry. Oh. This is Captain Universe.
Oh, okay. And then obviously Rocket Raccoon, Groot.
Which is funny because he looks like my kitty.
I know.
He looks more like a cat than he does a raccoon. And then of course Groot. Yeah, Groot is
looks menacing.
Yeah, he's monstrous. He's much more monstrous in a few ways in the comics. But yeah, so this was the first team of Guardians that this Peter Quill affiliated with. And so, that's kind of the 101 on comic book Quill. And then, of course, we have MCU, portrayed by Chris Pratt, or Chris Pratt. Yes. Depending on who you ask. Debuting Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, directed by James Gunn, and the film itself was written by James and Nicole Perlman. Do you remember what other movies Nicole Perlman worked on?
No, I don't. I remember looking at the credits at some point, but I don't remember.
Yeah, so apparently she was a consultant on Thor, the first Thor, and she was the story writer for Captain Marvel.
Ooh, oh yeah,
interesting,
I think that's the one I may have seen.
Yeah, Cosmic-y. And I thought what was interesting about what you had said in our last episode, The Eternals, was that we had never really seen a character arc begin in a movie without that character becoming realized by the end of it with Dane Whitman.
Oh, yes.
You kind of get the setup. And I almost feel like it's kind of interesting because in a weird way, Guardians was like that because we first met Thanos in Avengers. And then almost immediately it was like Guardians.
Yes.
Guardians, right? Guardians. Yeah. Which was kind of like, because I think that's more like Gamora. So it's kind of like Thanos in a weird way, like set up so much just by appearing in 5 seconds.
Basically, yeah.
Right?
I mean, think about it. Like,
Yeah.
That was like the setup to be like the big bad.
Right.
And then Guardians comes out because then people know that, like, oh, Gamora is the daughter of Thanos. So it's like, okay, well, he has to play some sort of role. Right. And then I think they just tied it in together because Thanos had a more prominent role in Guardians 1. And then I remember about the movie what James Gunn said. I think they gave him, because he asked, it's like, oh, what do you like want to be in the movie, like Guardians? Like they gave him free reign, but they had like, I think at least 2 requirements. I forgot what one of them is, but I know one of them is for sure that create a backstory for the Infinity Stones. Oh my God.
Just like really easy. Like, no big deal. You do whatever you want. Just create a backstory.
That was like one of the requirements. And he was like, oh, cool. I got it. And then he did it. And it was like this iconic scene of Benicio del Toro explaining like the 6 crystals.
Singularities.
Yeah. 6
which is crazy.
Crystals.
Which is so cool, especially for James Gunn. And I wonder if it was, forgive me for not looking into it or not, whether or not it's true that, like, was he pulled into this project because he was a comic book fan and loved Guardians, or did that just happen to be like, did they approach him and be like, hey, we'd like you to do these films? Also, do you know anything? And he was like, oh, Guardians of the Galaxy is my favorite thing.
I think so. Because like, I believe so, because that's how we got Suicide Squad. Right. And it was because of like, well, what property you want to do, and it's Suicide Squad, right? And so I would assume that's what he did with Feige. He was like, hey, like, we kind of want you to do a movie, but is there any characters that you would want to do? And he was like, that's crazy. Guardians of the Galaxy. I would assume that's how it went. Yeah. Oh my gosh, so good. Well done, James. Because honestly, I do have this kind of. It's so hard for me to choose my favorite. It's easy to say Guardians is my favorite, but I know that. It's like 0.00009 difference between it and Winter Soldier, just because it's such a Captain America with the Winter Soldier is such a good movie. Because Winter Soldier is one of my favorites too. It's so good. When you rewatch Guardians 1, you're like, wow, this is. It's so solid. Like, they're both solid for an origin story that tells the story of 5 characters. Yeah, and then some. Yeah, and then some. And you care about each character. It's really hard to do in an origin movie. But also for us, a collection of characters that at the time, no one really gave a shit about. Yeah. So, but then James Gunn, credit to his writing and, like his emotions to characters. Yeah. Because I think I said this to you before, maybe off mic, but even my oldest friend and I, when they first announced the property, we were both kind of like, Guardians? Yeah. Why are they doing Guardians? And then, we put it together like, okay, well, Infinity War, but what? Like, because they were just so offbeat and so, like, not quite the Avengers in terms of, like, status and, like, quote-unquote importance in the books. But, well, depending on who you asked. Yeah. But it was just such a weird, like, choice. But it was also probably one of the best decisions they had ever made. Also, was it, like, the first kind of movie that introduced the greater cosmic universe, right? Yeah. Because like I wouldn't really count Thor into that because you just know about whatever the 9 realms and everything. Yeah. But then when we saw Guardians, we really got to see like more of the galaxy. Like going to nowhere, going to Nova, and seeing all that stuff. Yeah. Kind of introducing that world, right? Which now makes more sense because it just works. And now you kind of like the minute that somebody even mentions nowhere, like you're like, oh, nowhere, I know nowhere. Yeah, exactly. Which is crazy. I also wanted to quickly mention the young man who portrayed young Peter Quill in the films, Wyatt Olaf, who was in both 1 and 2. And if you've seen the It films, he was young. I don't remember which actor played him older. But he's in those films and he's great. He kind of has a flair for horror as far as I can tell. I wanted to shout out him. I met him once at a con because I
was getting my, I used to have this phone case that was modeled after the Walkman.
Nice.
And it was the only thing I had with me at the time when I met James Gunn. So I got him to sign that. And then I was like, let me just keep going. And so when I met Wyatt Olaf, I was working a show and he was there and I was like, oh, I'm here.
Might as well.
Yeah. So I went up and I was like, can you sign my case? Which is kind of weird because like asking like a tween, like, hey, I liked you in Guardians. So I have a phone case signed by Wyatt as well. Do you think you're ready for your first pop quiz?
I mean, I'm never ready for anything. But
oh gosh. Okay. Oh, and I also wanted to point out a distinct difference between young Peter, basically. So in the movies, it's very surrounded by Missouri and St. Louis and all that stuff. Yeah. But I believe that's like it's kind of like a direct derivative of James himself because he's from St. Louis.
Okay.
And I believe Peter in the books is actually he was born and raised in Colorado.
Okay.
So let's just make that note real quick before we get into our pop quiz. So this one's gonna be this one's fun. All right. And you didn't see this part of the movie, so you're not gonna get to have that for mental reference for today. But pop quiz. So, volume 1, okay. MCU. This is an MCU question.
Yeah.
When we're first introduced to Peter Jason Quill during the Nova Corps, like, interrogation, if you will, the lineup.
Yeah.
What of the following is not featured on his criminal record?
Oh, I know. I knew you were going to ask about that little lower third detail.
It's so good. Because you have to admit, one of the favorite things, especially in Guardians 1, is, and speaking of the different territories, is that when you see the maps and then you see the graphics that they like utilize with like the codes and stuff, and they all mean something. They all translate into something.
Exactly.
So you can't help but look at these little details on each Guardian's screen. And so because it's Peter, we're going to talk about Peter.
Okay.
So, which of the following is not on his criminal record?
Okay.
1 count of assault, 2 counts of public intoxication, 1 count of fraud, 4 counts of grand theft extraterrestrial spacecraft, or 1 count of illegal manipulation of Gramosian Duchess.
Gramosian Duchess? I feel like that would be on there, but that could also be easily something that you make up.
I'm a monster.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
5 choices. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. 1 count of assault.
Yep.
2 counts of fraud.
Public intoxication.
That's true.
I know.
I feel like that's
fraud, grand theft, which is basically Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
Or illegal manipulation of Gramosian Duchess.
I feel like it's assault, and that's like the least like. I don't feel like he would like assault anybody.
Yeah.
See, now overthinking. I'm gonna go with assault.
You're gonna go with assault?
I'm just gonna go with assault.
All right. Sadly, my friend, incorrect.
Oh, God.
Peter Quill is guilty of 1 count of assault, 2 counts of public intoxication, 1 count fraud, 1 count illegal manipulation of Gramosian Duchess. He is not guilty of 4 counts of grand theft extraterrestrial spacecraft. I put that in there.
See? See what I mean?
So, but that's also crazy. How is Peter Quill not like guilty of stealing spacecraft?
Exactly. He's a Ravager. So can you blame me?
Yeah, sorry. But well done, because I too would have blamed me for the Gramosian Duchess. And on the heels of the Gramosian Duchess, because I needed to like validate that I did not make this up, Gramosians hail from the planet Gramos or Gramos. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. The planet itself was essentially it was debilitating, like a loss of energy.
Okay.
And so its lead, I believe his name is Mercurius, was sent to seize Mjolnir, believing that the energy harnessed in the hammer would re-energize the planet. So that is which is funny because I'm like, oh, there are all these little like nuggets now. Like, oh, So Thor, that's a Thor thing. Could that be something that they mention in Love and Thunder? Like,
never know.
Who knows? But I was just like, okay, now I know about the Grimosians. So there's the Grimosians for you. So first on our docket, we're going to talk about family. Because, you know, in the MCU, like as we see in the second film, I remember when it started to really unfurl, I was like the teasers. Yeah. I was like, and they showed Kurt Russell being like, I'm your father, Quill, like whatever. I was like, what?
They're just dropping that. Right? All right, cool.
They just dropped it, and they dropped his name, you know. But first and foremost, let's talk about Mama. So Meredith Quill, it's kind of like what I said earlier. You know, a young mother met and fell in love with an alien. And that's very much what she says in the film. She seems very like, she romanticized it. God knows if it was like that or not. And there, you know, then that's something that's directly emphasized in both the comic books and the films, is that she was just like this sweet little, you know, young woman who just happened upon this man. They fell in love, and he, you know, they conceived a child, and she was unfortunately left to raise him by herself. Mm-hmm. And, you know, like I mentioned, she unfortunately suffers a demise at the hands of the Badoon. And, you know, and he just basically wanted to get revenge on them. And so, of course, in the MCU, she's portrayed by Laura Haddock in both versions, volumes 1 and 2. When we first meet her, she's on the deathbed, like you just said. Yeah. And it's like, it's like the most painful scene. And it's just also, she's just so good in what little she is in these films. Yeah. That you can't help but be like enamored with her, at least from my perspective. You're just like, oh my gosh, and especially in volume 2, when you get to see her at her peak and she's thriving and she's like, you know, and ego's all over her, and it's like, her little river lily. And, you know, of course, the difference there is that she's on the deathbed because of a cancerous tumor. Mm-hmm. And we all know how that unfurls.
That's totally different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, so, I know this seems very quick. Are you ready for the next pop quiz?
Oh my gosh. I wonder, before we move, I wonder if James, like, thought about putting, like, her actual, like...
Oh, the actual origin?
Origin of, like, yeah, like, where aliens come in. Yeah. And, like, come down, like, how it is in the game.
Yeah, right?
Like, I wonder if, like, he ever thought about doing it like that. But maybe there's a reason he switched it, just because it's probably more emotional. There's more of an emotional connect. Right. To it, because at the heart of Peter Quill, it's his mom. Yeah. Like his character is solely based off like his love and relationship with his mom. Mm-hmm. So it's like, if you just kind of, and you need to like establish that rather quickly, and like especially in that first Guardians. Yeah. So that's why it's like, well, like let's say you did just like start off volume 1 with just like. Yeah, just straight up a ambush, a barrage, and you just kill. You know, there's not much like value, not value, but there's not much like
the payoff.
I guess payoff. There's not much story that can like. There's not enough story for the audience to be like, how am I supposed to like connect with him if like an alien race came down and just murdered Peter Quill's mom. Right. Where can I emotionally connect with that? But then like, she's dying from a cancer, and then he's at her bedside, but it's hard for him to, you know, It was just like, okay, that can resonate more with audiences. Yeah. And then him getting a gift from her. Yeah. And,
the sentimentality is implanted very quickly.
That's probably maybe why it's just an easier way to connect emotionally.
And also, of course, looking down at the journey and the characters that do intersect as a result. Because like if they had done it the other way, that like, and you'll hear this like very shortly, that introduces a very different suite of characters too. So by taking the approach that Gunn had, you know, with making Ego his father, and having her go out the way she did, and because of Ego and all of that, it takes Peter Quill and all of his affiliated characters down a different path that then introduces the Celestials, introduces like Nowhere and the Deviants and the Eternals in some weird way.
I mean, technically,
right? And the entire like Infinity War, everything about that that storyline kind of is directly related, if not as a result because origin, of this origin. So yeah, it's kind of nuts. Yeah. But yeah, so I do love what they did, and as much as I understand and get how not cool, but how interesting it is to have had her go down that way, and like, the Badoon took care of her, and then he's like, I'm gonna kill all the Badoon, and that's how he becomes like,
It's a totally different story.
It's a totally different story, and like you said, you're right. Like, at the heart of Peter Quill, he's his mom. It's all about his mom. So I totally get that, and I like that for him, for this character. But yeah, so speaking of Laura Haddock, the internal MCU crossover list, it's starting to kind of like build up with more people, coming back from a different role that they once had, like Michelle Yeoh and Gemma Chan. Do you remember where Laura Haddock was also featured in an MCU film?
Oh my God.
But God. You know that she was, which says a lot.
I think I read something about this.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Oh, can you give me a hint?
No, there's no hint for this one. Let's just say, see if I just say.
I know. Even if you said the movie, I'd probably get it, right?
How about this? Phase 1.
Oh, crap. I'm doing horrible with these pop quizzes recently. Laura.
Or are they getting harder?
They're good? Yeah, getting harder.
I should have stuck to how many armors there are.
Oh.
Name all the Stark tech in existence, and Geoffrey's going to be like, yeah, Mark 1, Laura, let's go.
Because I'm trying to remember her face. Or I do remember her face.
Yeah.
And then trying to
place her in another film is tough. It's a little tough.
Phase 1. Phase 1 consists of Iron Man, Cap, Thor. Jeez. Oh my gosh. I feel like I know, because I'm going to be like, I don't know, and you're going to tell me, and I'm going to be like, yeah.
I knew that.
Hi, Groot. Okay.
Groot, do you know the answer? Grooty, help Geoffrey. That's right.
Wow.
You got it. Can you get
it? Dang it. No, it's not it.
Yeah, he doesn't know the answer.
I don't know.
Well, Jeff, like Groot said, Laura Haddock's other MCU appearance was in Captain America: First Avenger. Do you remember the montage where he's doing the touring? And it's all like, the Cap wants you, tour. And he's like, she's one of the girls that comes up and goes, can I have your autograph?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's Laura Haddock. It's literally 3 seconds, if even that. But once you see her face, you're like, that's Meredith Quill. And it has been clarified, it's not actually Meredith Quill. It's just the same actress. Yeah, because the timeline that wouldn't line up. The more you know.
I know. Jesus, man.
I know, buddy. Oh, Groody. Yeah. So we're gonna talk about Papa now.
Oof.
This is where it gets a little weird.
I mean, in volume 2 it got really weird.
So weird. Before we talk about Ego, we're going to talk about comic book Papa, because it's not the same. Not the same at all. Which is what brings me back to my earlier statement that my friend and I were like, what? Looking at the trailer, I was like, wait, is this a ruse? Like, Ego? Because Ego in the comics is a literal planet.
Yeah.
And so in the comics, Pete's father... Mm-hmm. Peter Jason Quill's father is actually a man named, Jason of Spartax.
Nice.
So it's got the apostrophe, so Jason. So it's Jason of Spartax, who at the time of Pete's conception was emperor of the planet. So we're not going to get too deep into him. He's basically royalty. He's royalty. He's a royal blood, and they're kind of like Xandarians, where they look humanoid. They look like humans. They're a mixed match. There's some people who've come from other planets and whatnot. But so the Badoon, in the books, it's uncovered that the Badoon were sent to Earth to off Meredith because Jason directly, because the whole thing is that there's a clash between Spartax and Badoon.
Oh, okay.
So the Spartoi, I think they say Spartoi in the game. I always thought of it.
Spartoi.
That's like the name of the race, right?
Okay.
I always read it as Spartois, but I guess it's Spartoi. So that's basically like their war. It's always Spartoi versus Badoon. And so Jason was like the sole heir to the Spartax throne. And he was summoned into war during that time. So during the battle, or like while he was going into battle, or just after, I can't remember the timeline, I know Jason, his ship crashes onto Earth, and that's when he meets Meredith, and that's when everything goes down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then and so they started this brief relationship before he eventually took off again and went back home and to finish the battle. So that said, now we'll talk about Ego. And like I mentioned, it's very interesting because he's supposed to be a planet. And it's very crazy because they actually, Gunn magnificently paid homage, like he would as a true fan, to the planet.
Yeah, yeah.
Which you see in the like last arc of the film, or second to last arc of the film. The third act. And it's that scene where Kraglin and I believe Yondu and Rocket are on the ship, and they're going in, and it's got a face on it. I was like, oh my god,
like they did it.
Yeah, and then that for me like completely justified it. I was like, okay, I'm okay with it now. I was like, all right, cool. So in the books, Ego is known as Egros, later Ego Prime, and he was a scientist on this planet, the home planet. They never actually mentioned the planet name. Oh, okay. It's just a planet, and so of the star. And so he was a scientist, and the planet itself was on the brink of destruction when this being named the Stranger came to visit, and he did experiments on the planet. And so what basically happened is like he triggered the planet's internal workings to like pretty much go nova.
Oh.
And so its suns and the twin planets that were orbiting the Ego's planet, they basically went to chaos mode. They're like, what do we do? Our planet's going to end. And so people tried to take off, and then others hunkered down, and there was like this bunker system near the core of the planet. So they all kind of gathered in there, and Ego was like one of these people trying to take care of everybody and, whatever. And so unfortunately, the planet went nova ahead of time, like before its intended day or whatever you want to call it. And it exploded. It was like pretty much imploded, but Stranger made it so that he merged Egros with every living thing on the planet.
Oh my gosh.
And basically made him
the planet.
Okay. So it's like they became one. They became a
Ego,
single
the
thing.
living planet.
And so now he's Ego, the living planet.
Nice.
And then later on, he becomes Ego Prime, which is basically like, strangely enough, very similar to what we do see in the film when after Peter has his realization that he needs to not be bonded with Ego.
Or else.
Yeah, and he starts shooting him up. That's what Ego Prime looks like.
Oh,
and he's
Jesus.
like, and his like basically his body starts to kind of like come back together.
Yeah.
And it's like its raw form.
Yeah.
That's like Ego Prime.
Oh man.
I know, it's crazy. I was like, dude, James Gunn and these Easter eggs are so good. They're so good. And they're never forced. They fit so organically in the film that you wouldn't even think like, oh, that's obviously pulled from the comic book.
Yeah, like it's a totally different thing.
It just seems so different, but it's very much. But
it makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So of course, Ego in Guardians Volume 2 is portrayed by Kurt Russell. And it's like everything we've said so far. He's this he's a celestial.
I'm gonna say, he's a celestial,
which is like now resonates a lot different. Before it was kind of like, oh, he's a celestial, interesting.
Yeah.
Nowhere is a celestial head. Okay, cool. And then now, with the arrival of the Eternals and seeing the other celestials, it bears a whole other meaning.
Yeah, you're like, oh wow, he was powerful then.
Yeah, he was nuts.
Was there an Easter egg in Eternals about
Ego?
About Ego?
I don't know. For me,
something about like a like, oh, we gave, I don't know if that was just me or I was just like Mandela affecting it myself. Where I was saying I gave, like when Arishem was talking about like the history of Eternals and stuff, or Celestials, I'm sorry, and then they said something about a guy on a planet, like giving a celestial like their own planet type of thing. I don't know. That could just be me like manifesting myself.
I mean, but he does say that, of course, if you, spoiler alert, if you haven't listened or watched Eternals, we covered them in our previous episode. He says that he has that speech about when he's, talking to Cersei about the Celestials and how each one has its host planet.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
And because the seeds, the celestial seeds, if you will, were kind of familiar in a weird way. Like they seemed like the ego thing with the plant.
That's what ego did.
Right.
Maybe that was like the homage I was thinking of. Is like, we go to these planets and we plant, seeds.
Seeds, yeah.
Yeah.
So for ego, in Guardians 2, his version is kind of, it correlates to the comic book in that Gramos. So it's like your name. You have your own planet, G. G Ramos.
Sick.
So it's kind of like Planet Gramos in that, like, the energy, he was harvesting this energy to like power the planet.
Yeah.
So I was like, now I'm having this epiphany as we're talking, of course. Like, I wonder if that was kind of part of like, maybe James Gunn really likes that arc and he was like, let me feed that in, but also like kind of hint at the Celestials thing and how they're kind of like flowers and seeds and they're planting all over the galaxy, which is kind of neat. But yeah, as far as we know, I mean, we only saw so much of his power, but he explains it when he's unveiling his grand plan to Peter, and that like he created planets, he created humankind and our aliens and species across the universe, across the galaxy. So yeah, he's definitely. I mean, he's kind of like Arishem himself or itself. It created planets and it created celestial. I mean, they're just all creators.
They essentially created the universe. Yeah, that's what they're trying to say.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
so it's like, okay.
So yeah, to then know that he was ultimately taken down by a half celestial who was his son. Just nutty. And also, like, God, he could have been so powerful, right? Like, what is the potential that Peter Quill could have had aside creating giant Pac-Man manifestations? And then we have a listener comment from Patreon patron Laura C, who says, hypothetically, Peter could have a kid somewhere in the galaxy. They would be 1/4 celestial and not know it. Would they have lost their power when ego exploded? I get mad when I think about Peter losing his awesome powers. That's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, because essentially they say it in the moment. It's like ego says it to Peter. He's like, oh, if you kill me, then you won't be celestial anymore.
You won't, yeah.
So it's like, okay, so they're two batteries that are basically charging each other.
Basically.
So if Peter were to have fathered a child in the galaxy somewhere, and that child was 1/4 celestial, would they still be a celestial?
That's interesting,
right? Like,
because technically, right? He doesn't carry those godlike powers anymore. No, not anymore, right?
No.
So he's just a regular dude.
He's just a regular dude doing regular things, or so we think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we'll see. I mean,
yeah, it's definitely worthwhile thought, but also you kind of think of it like a motherboard, like a circuit board. If you remove one thing, hi, oh, you're so talky today. You want to be on the show? If you remove one battery, the whole thing goes defunct. It's like old Christmas lights.
Yeah.
If one bulb goes bad, the rest, it doesn't work. So yeah, I mean, by that thought, if you think, okay, well, ego is out of commission, Pete is too, that means any of their offspring are kaput as well. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you think?
I would, by the laws of, life. I would assume so. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So there you go, Laura. I don't know. We'll see. Tell us your thoughts if you have any other expanded ideas on is Peter Quill still even part celestial? Is he powered at all? And could that carry on?
I guess we'll see in these next movies that he's going to be in. Because he's going to be in 3.
He's going to be in Thor, and then
the holiday special.
And Guardians of yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And who's to say maybe there's another end credit scene for another film? We don't know.
Jeez.
Like they could be. Like who knows?
Oh my gosh.
But speaking of offspring and siblings and such, did you know Peter Quill has a half sister? He just went wide-eyed.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Did you know Peter Parker has a half sister?
That I definitely did not know.
We don't talk about her too much, but yeah, she's around. But Peter Quill has a half sister in the books by the name of Victoria of Spartax. So she's the sitting empress of the planet now because Peter Quill is very ill-informed and not capable. So here she is. She's gorgeous.
Oh, half sister. Okay.
Yeah. So Jason, she's basically born out of wedlock and what have you, but she's still an heir to the throne. So because Peter Quill doesn't want to do it.
Nice.
He's too busy being Star-Lord. But there was a time in the books where he did sit as king for a bit. And it's an interesting storyline if anybody is interested. Just wanted to look up Peter Parker's sister real quick for Jeff here. Her name is Teresa Parker, which is also, it's a name that goes through the lineage a bit. That's his sister.
Nice.
So, I truly don't think they'll ever introduce her in the main timeline, at least. But, who knows about multiverse? Multiverse is really opening up some portals, So we'll see. And she's actually of Earth 616. So it's not like she's a cross-universe character, But who knows? We might see her one day. But yeah, so Victoria was basically, she's the seated empress. And yeah, she's awesome. She kind of looks like a Valkyrie, if you will. And she's got the armor and she's pretty dope. She's like 8 feet tall. I'm exaggerating, but she's like very statuesque, And so you look at Peter Quill and then you look at her and you're just like, oh, you're related.
I know, yeah.
It's one of those scenarios. Whereas, in the MCU, as far as we know, the only surviving family that Pete has is his grandpa, who's in Volume 2 for a brief second. Do you remember where?
Oh my goodness. Was that at the beginning?
Nope.
No.
Nope. He's in the beginning of Volume 1, but he's in Volume 2 as well. I want to say Act 3, if that's the proper terminology.
Oh my gosh. How am I forgetting how the movie's laid out?
All your Guardians knowledge, bro. Bro, what is your Guardians knowledge? Oh, should I just talk to you like Cosmo? Just talk to you like Cosmo. Oh, do you not remember the Guardians of the Galaxy? The Galaxy factoids. As Groot rubs up on the microphone.
Gosh.
Groot, you're not
was it in a
supposed
flashback?
No. He was actively in the film.
Dude, I am tripping hard.
Again, it's a brief cameo. So when he goes, when he's taking over Earth.
Oh yeah.
He's in the car.
Yeah.
That narrowly
escapes
misses
it.
Yeah.
That's wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Jesus.
Yep. So that's as far as we know.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the only surviving family member he has, and during the expansion, that's what it's called. And I think Gunn even confirmed that Pete doesn't have any intention to go back to Earth.
Yes,
he just
said
has
that
none
in a Twitter thread. Yeah.
Yeah, even though he's clearly there during Endgame.
But he wants nothing to do with her.
Nothing.
Yeah.
It's just so crazy. So from that, we're going to skip to friends and alliances. I mapped out the characters that we're going to talk about as such, because I wanted to directly correlate it in some way. And so, you know, from jumping from his family to his friends, it's almost one and the same, because that's like the theme of the Guardians, right?
Yeah.
Friends are family and whatnot. And so, of course, like who are we to not talk about Yondu and the Ravagers? I didn't want to get too deep into them because it's one of those instances where it's like we have full potential to talk about Yondu and their Ravagers on their own.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, but you know, of course, in the MCU portrayed by Michael Rooker, who is crazy banana pants. He's so cool. He's like cool, but he's genuinely crazy banana pants. I agree. He's great. And of course, Sean Gunn as Kraglin. Speaking of Groot, who I adopted Groot from, or not Groot, but Rocket.
Nice.
That's okay. You're adopted from Sean Gunn too. And of course he plays Kraglin in all the films that we've seen so far. So the thing that we will touch on for this episode at least is that the origin story of Peter Quill's path intersecting with theirs is a bit different. You know, of course, like in the film, it's very straightforward. In the first 5 minutes of the film, they enter the scene. Peter's mother just died. He gets abducted in the middle of a field, which is very similar to the What If version with T'Challa, who is just, you know, hunting or whatever he's doing, and then he gets abducted in the middle of a field as well. But in the books, it's a bit different. It's kind of like, you know, calling back to how when Peter essentially steals the spaceship, and goes to space. He is a kid. Let's face it. He's a kid. He doesn't know how to fly a spaceship. So he gets out there and then he gets stranded. So basically, Yondu and the Ravagers come along. Yeah. And they're like, oh, we got ourselves a spaceship. And then they take the spaceship and it's got the kid in it. And then one of the jokes in the books, I think it's in the books, he even says, he's like, oh, we should kill him. And then someone else is like, no, he's small enough. He can fit into all the places we can't get into, which is in the movie.
It's exactly
because he could fit into places and steal stuff. So that's kind of how they come together in the books, which I think is very hilarious. And yeah, it makes sense. It's like, you know, this kid just took a spaceship. There's no way. And yeah, so he's saved by the Ravagers in Yondu, who does have a very, you know, like almost paternal relationship with him in the books, like not quite like in the movie.
Oh, okay.
Because I feel like in the movie it's amplified and with reason. Like it's totally substantiated like that way. But I think it's not quite as much. But yeah.
He may be your father, boy, but he ain't your daddy.
It's so good.
Just so poetic and profound.
It's so good.
It's like, yeah.
Oh my God. I know. I was going to watch it today and I was like, do I like Pain? How much do I like Pain? Do I want to watch that today? I don't know.
Is he cool? Yeah, he's cool. I'm Mary Poppins, y'all.
Which was going to be one of our original... like ending, what was it gonna? It was kind of gonna be our ending, our sign off for the trailer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's a Merry podcast, y'all. It was gonna be a Merry podcast, y'all. So good. And of course, you know, beyond the Ravagers and Yondu, the Guardians of the Galaxy, bruh.
So good.
So yeah,
so good.
The team as it stands now in the films is Rocket, Groot. Is he looking at me? No, he's looking at the screen though. Rocket, Groot, Drax, Gamora, Mantis, and Nebula, aside Peter Quill. And then currently in the books, as recent as I want to say last month, the current lineup is Rocket, Groot, Drax, Gamora, and Mantis, as well as Moondragon, who, fun fact for you, is Drax's daughter. So, and I'd love to talk about Drax eventually because you kind of get where Dave Bautista is coming from in terms of his kind of like a feeling that he could have been more in the MCU.
Sure.
And he feels like he's lost that opportunity because it's been X amount of films and he hasn't gotten to dive that deep into Chimera and all that.
Yeah.
And Chimera.
Thanks. Yeah.
And Ovette, but In the books, his Earth name, he was an Earthling named Arthur Douglas. And his daughter, whose name is escaping me now, she was abducted and found by Thanos' father mentor. His father mentor.
Oh, okay.
Abducted Heather Douglas. Abducted Heather and then raised and cultivated her to become like an extraterrestrial being named Moondragon.
Oh, okay.
So she like manifested like telepathy and all these powers because of like alien technology and not breeding, but breeding of a different sort.
Yeah.
So she's actually actively on the team right now. So they always have these conversations where she's like, father, whereas Drax was like kind of like reborn, if you will.
Okay.
So, but they know each other. So it's kind of cool. And I think she's a wife or she's a girlfriend, something like that, but they're great too. And then Nova, of course, who's Richard Rider, who comes in and out of the Guardians books since the dawning of the ages.
Yeah.
He's very important. And the fact that we haven't yet seen him.
I wonder if we will.
Shocking. Yeah.
I wonder if we will.
He might be the next iteration of the Guardians. Because James did mention this is Volume 3. That's the last time we're going to see this lineup.
Of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Of that version of Guardians of the Galaxy. And I don't think he's going to come back for Volume 4 onward. I think there will be a Volume 4 onward. I just think it's not going to be... It might have like...
when James says he's done with a character, he's done with
I'm just like face palming. I'm like, no!
Like, he's made it very adamant and clear about never bringing back Yondu because why would I do that?
Yeah, so exactly.
If James says you're probably, after Volume 3, you're never going to see these characters on screen again, you probably will never see them.
Probably not. So Nova can take it home or bring it back, whatever you want to say, and he might be the next leader of the next team. And then, of course, Quasar. There are many versions of Quasar, like different versions of all these characters, like Captain Marvel, for instance. There's different iterations. And so the Guardians has both Avril Kincaid and Wendell Vaughn. Super Skrull. Funny enough, Super Skrull is on there. And then, of all characters, Doctor Doom.
Oh my God.
There's a whole thing with Doctor Doom. Wow. He even switched bodies with Rocket at one point. It was really weird. It's very strange, but it's fun. It's very fun. So that's the current lineup in the books. So again, they have so much potential to kind of grow different characters in different films. Doesn't necessarily need to be Guardians of the Galaxy. It can be something else. But gosh, we don't know. Given, again, spoiler alert, but given Eros' appearance in Eternals, who is also in this among this character tree.
I said I don't know where they're going with things.
Where are they going? It's crazy. It's such a big bright galaxy now.
And it's we're getting to a part 2 of the Marvel cinematic universe of these characters that were introduced to us, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3.
Yep.
Their stories, they have to come to an end.
Yeah.
Yep. Iron Man's story came to an end. Steve Rogers' story came to an end. Thor's is about to.
Yeah.
I would assume.
God, can you imagine? Again, and we said this in another episode, a lot of people that were featured in phase 1 and 2 are coming to that 10-year mark.
Yeah.
Widow's or their end point.
Definitely gone.
Who?
Widow.
Oh, yeah.
Widow.
Sure. And I forget.
Yeah.
I forget she's gone. I'm like, oh my God, she's dead.
She's gone.
Yeah.
Hawkeye is probably on the verge of retirement after the show.
For sure. Retirement and not death.
Yeah. Honestly, who knows?
Please, don't kill him.
He's passing on the mantle to Kate.
Yeah.
And then you have the Guardians, who were on the cusp of end of phase 1, kind of start of phase 2.
Because where do you even go? Gamora, and like you just said, with James saying Yondu's never coming back, I think that stands absolutely true for Gamora. Original Gamora, she's gone. She's done.
Oh, she's definitely dead.
2014,
this is 2014 Gamora.
2014
that we're
Gamora
gonna see.
Might have some storyline there. What they do with her, I really don't know. I really am just I gotta say goodbye to that ship because I think it is sailed.
Yeah.
I think it is gone, and I think she's going somewhere. I think they'll meet again, but I don't think it's gonna be.
It's not the same.
It's not
they're
the
not
same.
going to have that relationship.
No.
And I feel like that's what Volume 3 is kind of going to be part. It's just It's just Quill trying to be like, hey, like, it's me. And she's like, no, I don't want to.
Yeah, I have a weird theory that she might, along the way, like meet Adam Warlock. And because they're a huge...
Oh, forget Warlock's part.
Warlock's coming in. And that she might meet Warlock, or maybe they do introduce Richard Rider, because both of them are both love interests for her in the comics. So
that too, and then Quill's like,
and Quill's like, yo, me,
the hell?
And she's like, I don't know you.
I don't know you. Sorry, I'm in love with.
Yeah, and so that could end both of their storylines.
I think we find out Rocket's backstory. That's what he said.
Yep.
I don't know
because they do. Because speaking of their lineup with the Nova Corps on Rockets, it says like, what is it? Affiliates or associates?
Yeah.
It says Drax, Groot, and Lila.
Lila. Yeah.
Lila. See, there's so many. There's Leela Barton, Lila Cheney, and now Lila.
Lila. You beat the game, guy.
Yes. Sorry, Groot. And so the otter. The adorable otter. Beaver? Otter.
Otter.
So she's already in the verse as well. So that's definitely happening.
And then we'll see about like how Drax...
Yeah.
His story and everything.
Yeah. So. Because, I mean, from Dave Bautista's, like, it seems like he's probably filmed and done already, like, for all we know. You know what I mean? Like, he just seems like he's very dissatisfied with his ending or what seems to be his ending. So, I don't know.
Maybe it changed.
It could change. He could get a series. We don't know. Yeah. Like, you know, I think he could get a series.
But he's also, I told you that, I'm like, yo, he's in his mid-50s. And you're like, no, he wasn't. Yeah. And I was like, Dai, he's almost 60.
It's so crazy.
Like, you think he wants to sit in 4 hours of makeup every day?
True. It's so true.
He's getting too old.
I mean, they could just do... Here's me being, like, hopeful. I mean, he has different... As you can see in the game, he has a variety of attire. And they could just cover his chest.
Sure.
And it just be his head.
Sure.
Like, who knows? The poor Guardians are all going away. I'm so sad. Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see what the lineup ends up being like. So, you know, when it comes to adversaries, there's no other way of saying it. I feel like the whole damn galaxy is against Star-Lord.
Oh, of course.
So there's no way we're even going to go close to covering, you know, he's not like a Spider-Man. He's not like a Thor, where they have these very distinct adversaries that they are recurring and they always, like, that's his arch nemesis. Like, I just feel he doesn't have one of those. But a notable one that I will mention right on top of this particular subject matter is the matriarch. And Geoffrey is very quickly becoming familiar with this matriarch, because I'm not going to go into details about this character, but they are a featured main player in the Guardians of the Galaxy game. That character is a bit different in the comics, of course.
Really?
It's not the same. It's kind of, the game is kind of more paying homage and Easter eggs to comic book fans than it is doing direct versions.
Yeah.
But basically, the matriarch is the assistant to the leader of the Universal Church of Truth, who is Magus. And that's a very interesting storyline, very culty.
I mean, you can see it in the game for sure.
Yeah, and you know, like we actually talked a little bit about this off mic, but that's more of an Adam Warlock territory of the stories. So if you want to go back and read that, that's about 1976 to the 80s, I think. Very good stuff. But we do have a few that are on both sides of the playing field, if you will. Starting with Korath, who, you know, we've talked about a few times here and there, who's portrayed by Jaimin Hansu, the infamous who in the books is a Kree cyber geneticist and former member of the Kree Star Force and first Phalanx Select. So he's basically like kind of how he's portrayed. He's an army man, if you will. Mm-hmm. He's a soldier who does not give a flying turd who Star-Lord is.
Nice. We love that.
Scrut. And then, of course, Ronan the Accuser. Yep. Portrayed by Lee Pace in Volume 1, who I thought was sensational. He is one of those people that's
a character actor, both visually and by voice. Because I don't know, did you know that show, Pushing Daisies?
No,
That's how I knew him.
Oh, wow.
It was like a 1-season show that came out, I don't know, in 2005 or something. And it was basically about this mortician who could bring people back from the dead. It was like whimsical.
Okay, nice.
And he was on it, and he was like a very Peter Parker-ish type of character. And so to see him like transform
into this whole different kind
into Ronan, I was like, what?
It's
and then
crazy.
that voice coming out of him, I was like, ooh, how? And it's just his voice. It's just he knows how to.
Yeah.
That's insane to me. That's crazy.
Dang.
It's so nuts. He's so great. Hi. Are you okay? And yeah, Ronan in the books is a longtime supreme public accuser and eventual like supremor of the Kree Empire, who of course are like a very, very much recurring race in the Guardians books. And you see that in the game too. Like the main characters are Kree. They're all Kree, and you can tell by their, the blue skin.
Yeah.
And it's, you can identify them very quickly. Not all of them are crazy, not all of them are bad people, of course, but it's difficult, It's kind of like a War of the Worlds type of ordeal where they just have an infamy for their passions.
Yeah.
And then of course there's Aisha and the Sovereign in Volume 2. Aisha herself, portrayed by Elizabeth Debicki, who is sensational. I think she's like 28. Maybe.
Oh my gosh, nice.
Now she's super
28?
young. Yeah.
Oh, she's my age.
Yeah, I think she's your age. Honestly, she's incredibly accomplished, and she's portraying Princess Diana in The Crown.
Oh, okay.
The final season of The Crown.
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
and she was also in that series with Tom Hiddleston. What is it? Come on. Do we know this?
Wait.
Everybody at home is like screaming.
I'm looking at it.
I'm like Hotel.
Oh, she was also in Tenet.
Yes, she was in Tenet. Yeah,
I love.
She's gorgeous.
That's
yeah,
right.
She's gorgeous. Her. She's great. Great actress.
Nice.
What was it called?
The show?
Yeah.
With
Tom Hiddleston.
The Night Manager.
The Night Manager.
Okay.
There you go. Yeah, and she's stunning.
Yeah.
She's truly stunning.
And then oh my gosh, she was in The Great Gatsby. Oh, she played Jordan. Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. So I've definitely seen her and stuff.
Right.
I love that.
And she's 31, but she's only 31. So she's been in this game. She was like 25 when she portrayed Aisha.
Oh, okay.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
She's great. Such a great actress.
And she's the reason, and she creates Adam Warlock.
Yep.
That's not a spoiler.
Adam.
It's not a spoiler.
Yeah. From Volume 2. So we'll see her bring Will Poulter to life in some...
That's going to be I can't wait to see Will Poulter's, like, how they... Because I played the game, so I see how that is in the Guardians game.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay.
Interesting, right?
Yeah. I wonder how they're going to do Will Poulter like that and make like, believable and not, comic
hokey. Yeah. And then I think they're going to take equal parts of James Gunn's like just stratagem and incredible way of bringing characters to life, but also like a little bit like, like we mentioned in Eternals, like the mechanics that Icarus had and the way that he was able to kind of just very seamlessly come across as this very, very powerful entity. And I'm super excited. I am most curious of what outfit they're going to put him in and what outfits maybe.
I wonder if he got like super buff.
Have you seen the kid?
I've seen some, but I haven't seen
He's so jacked. And I've only seen like screenshots here and there because of everybody going nutso cuckoo when he was announced. I was like, what? And then I started looking through the pictures and everybody thirst trapping over Will Poulter. And I was like, Marvel.
I wonder, I can't wait to find out who else probably was like in the running for the role.
I know. And I think with him, we probably won't see a lick of a spoiler. Because he's going to be behind the scenes completely. He's going to be CG'd in most parts and touched up.
Probably, or wearing the hoods that they wear.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, can't wait. He's going to be great. And of course, Ego, like we mentioned before. And of course, Thanos.
The great Thanos.
Yeah, father-in-law woes with that one, portrayed by the great Josh Brolin in all the films, and he still has
amazing.
He still has presence to this day. So we ran a poll on social and asked how many of you thought Quill was to blame for the Avengers' loss in Infinity War. Mm-hmm. It's kind of funny. I put it up. Admittedly, I put it up pretty late on Twitter, but even it's funny. Instagram. I say this all the time. All the platforms are very different audiences. They have different people. Twitter said, nah, he was justified.
Ooh.
Instagram, 100% his fault.
Wow.
So what the heck? What is it, Jeff?
Oh, I have my reason.
Is the show gonna end this episode? No, what's your reasoning?
I'm on Twitter's side.
Yeah.
He's justified.
My man.
He's justified.
High five with myself.
He was totally, and if anyone thinks otherwise, then you have no real human emotion.
Right. That's exactly it. And it's like the humanity of, like, again, it goes back to like Meredith Quill. It wasn't about ego and him being half celestial and all that cosmic power. It was about the humanity and what he got from his mother's side. And that is the moment of complete humanity. Yeah. Because who wouldn't do that?
If you guys go and get into a situation where your father-in-law kills your girlfriend, kills their daughter that you were dating, and you tell me that you don't react at all, please
losing your father and your other father and your mom.
Please DM us so that we can, talk about it.
Let's talk. Let's suss it out. Let's just talk.
And just, maybe agree. No, what the fuck? No, shut the fuck up. It's justified.
Groot's like, bye. He's like, this is getting intense.
Like, no. Like any sense.
100% justified. Oh my gosh. And that's not me being biased at all. That is like truly like, I could be mad at him very easily, but I was like, he was completely justified hitting him in the head like that. And also it's like Mantis, like, dude, like, come on, concentrate. Everybody had an opportunity. Everybody was sitting there going, wow, he's about to do this, huh?
Yeah.
Well, all right, Peter.
If Tony lost Pepper, he'd react the same way.
Thank you.
Who else can we? You see it in What If? Doctor Strange.
Christine.
Lost Christine.
Yeah.
He literally destroyed a whole universe because he wanted her back. Shut the fuck up.
I love lit Jeff. It's true though, but those are fantastic examples. Yeah. Those are fantastic. For a full-fledged fact, Tony would have done that for Pepper. Let alone
Thor would have done it for Jane.
Oh yeah.
Steve Rogers literally went back in time to be with Peggy.
And everyone's like, oh, how cute, he went back in time for Peggy. But, Peter Quill, he hit Thanos in the head. Like, bruh, what? He changed space and time to go see Peggy. Like, changed the course of all the universe. But, not that Peter didn't, but
he sacrificed a mission to get back,
Hi,
Nakia.
Yes, he's pulling with his arms. Yes!
Dude.
They're all fantastic examples. Thank you, my friend. Sheesh. That's totally right.
This is why the MCU is different, because they're not just superheroes. They have human feelings.
Exactly.
Which is the key difference between MCU and the DCEU.
DCEU. Yeah. It's very true. It's very, very true. So if you don't agree with this, please tell us. We'd love to have this dialogue with you. You're good, bro. No need to apologize. It's okay. So speaking of love interests and girlfriends and such, let's go into Peter's stuff. Mm-hmm. This is some interesting stuff. I mean, I'm not going to go too crazy into it. There's only so many, honestly. So some random ones in the MCU, he mentions them all in Volume 1 where they're in the prison. So there's a Rayjack woman, a Kree girl, an Oscavarian, who are the species that have multiple limbs. And they all tried to kill him. And that's kind of a running joke, I feel, with Peter Quill and his romantic interest, because even in the game, with the main character that is like his ex-girlfriend in the game, like they weren't like, they were kind of at odds, but they still ended good.
Yeah.
So like they'll still do him favors and stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty much the same in both MCU and the books, I feel. And like I mentioned, the Gramosian Duchess.
Yes.
So not only did he have that on his record, apparently he actually had an affair with her.
Nice.
So imagine that storyline, if you will. I'm sure it's like a brilliant side story you can just put in your head and you're like, oh, that makes so much sense. So so that's how he got that on his criminal record. But of course, like in the films, it's quite literally two people who are, first is Barit, the pink girl, who is portrayed by Malia Kryling in Volume 1. And she's peppered throughout the film. You don't see her too much, but she's in there quite a bit. And she's a Krylorian who hooked up with Quill just after he fled the Ravagers. I keep wanting to say Revengers, and I'm like,
Revengers.
Wrong film. So before we get into the rest of the ladies, I do have a pop quiz for you.
But also before that,
okay.
Peter Quill has one of my favorite lines in the MCU.
Yeah.
Where he was just like the ship, Quill. He's like, oh, the ship is put a black light. Looks like a Jackson Pollock painting. Yes. And I was just like, oh, I love that.
Dude, apparently that was
Improvised?
Yeah. There are so many lines in that film. And so many moments that are apparently improvised. I was like, holy
I love that.
Flarking Scott.
Because I remember, I don't know.
So good.
I don't know if it was that, I'm pretty sure it was that movie where I was just like, Jackson Pollock painting? What are Jackson Pollock painting? And then you look and you're like, oh, it's so gross.
So if you haven't Googled Jackson Pollock's paintings, they're essentially like splattered paint.
So I love using
everywhere.
I love using like Jackson Pollock paintings as like a punchline to a dirty joke. It's hilarious.
How Peter Quill of you. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so Barit is kind of that cut of cloth among Peter's ladies that aren't shown in the MCU but are clearly there in some capacity.
Barit, you're still here?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I'll be honest. I forgot you were here. Like, oh.
Love him.
He's terrible. He is absolutely terrible. So speaking of that scene, what is Barit wearing when we first meet her in the Milano?
Damn it. Oh, she's wearing a shirt.
Okay.
One of Peter's shirts. I don't know if there's a band on it or a certain, I forgot the graphic on it. Oh no.
Hey, but you got half of that. Yeah.
She's wearing one of Peter's shirts.
Okay. Is that your final answer?
Oh, it's like, I can't remember the graphic. Was it like a cat? No, was it a band? I don't know.
Did it look like this?
Dang it.
So I just unraveled the shirt.
It is.
River Rafter, JD Canoe, rental, Dolores River.
What's the Easter egg for it? Is there?
So the Easter egg with this, and I kind of spoiled it earlier on, but so in the movie, Missouri. Comics, Colorado. Dolores River is in Colorado.
Nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
So dang, James Gunn at it again. An Easter egg. So yeah, I got the t-shirt because
I hope he listens to this episode.
At James Gunn. Hey, so obsession time. Hey, Mr. Gunn, if you're listening.
What we're saying is accurate.
I know. Feel free to come and be on the show. I had half mine to add him and be like, hi. We're recording an episode on Peter Quill. Do you want to be on it?
Or you just want to come on an episode and just talk.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. 100%. At James Gunn. Hey, James. You want to be on this episode about talking comics and MCU and stuff? Yeah, let's go.
Love that.
Oh my God. I'm going to do it now. I'm just going to be like, watch me. And then I want everybody to retweet it, like and share. So yeah, so I feel like that's like a sweet Easter egg that he just kind of planted. Because like, it's like one of those things where you're like, what is the relevance of that? Is it just a t-shirt?
Mm-hmm. Nope.
But then you think about it and you're like, oh, Colorado. There you go. Genius. So here's one that you perhaps weren't familiar with or had no idea or had like, maybe I mentioned it once upon a time. But in the books, one of his more recent and significant others was Kitty Pryde, a.k.a. Shadowcat from X-Men, who is basically Chris Claremont's baby. Like anything Shadowcat, And if you see Chris Claremont's name on anything, it's either Shadowcat or Storm. Those are his two ladies. And so there was a brief period of time in the books, both in Star-Lord, Legendary Star-Lord, I believe, the solo series and Guardians of the Galaxy, where they intermingled quite a bit. So there was this huge storyline where the original X-Men, Angel, Beast, Iceman, Jean, and Cyclops, they came... God, how do I explain this without getting too far off the rails? Basically, their younger selves came from the future.
Okay.
From the future? They came back in time.
Was it Days forward. Of Future Past?
Kinda. I mean, sheesh. So they came to the future from the past to basically learn from their older selves of what mistakes to not make.
Okay.
I don't know how you do that without rippling the time.
It's literally Days of Future Past.
Yeah. So it's basically that. And so what happens is that there's this arc called the Trial of Jean Grey. And so the Shi'ar, who are another race of aliens, Queen Lilandra, if you're familiar with Lilandra at all, she was in the 90s X-Men quite a bit. She's Professor X's lover from space. She has crazy, like, all armor gear. There's a very iconic painting of her done by Julie Bell from my cards that is just gorgeous. I always loved her. She was kind of like a weird offbeat character. But you know, like their whole affiliation is like the Gladiator. Do you know the Gladiator? He's like Superman. No. He's got a mohawk. He's purple.
Nice.
And then Deathbird and all these characters. So anyway, the Shi'ar were going to put young Jean on trial for the future Jean's mishaps with the Phoenix Force.
Got it.
And so what happens is basically like Kitty Pryde is in space for that reason, and Peter Quill is in the right place, wrong time.
Of course. Right place, wrong time?
It's a joke. And so they basically cross paths. They start to feel for each other, and then they inevitably become engaged.
Oh my gosh.
So he so much, they get so in love with each other, so different, so very different, that she takes on the moniker Star-Lord.
Oh.
And she becomes Star Lady.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and full on, the jacket, everything, even the helmet. And so they become like two peas in a pod, and then just slowly, like all the good storylines, just pull them away, and they're like, all right, well,
sorry,
it didn't work out. Bye. And then they're gone. Yeah, all right. So they never made it to the altar. I think she even went back because, you know, her classic love story is Colossus. So I think she went back to Colossus. Correct me if I'm wrong. I just don't remember. But now she's currently on the Marauders team with Jerry Duggan, who also wrote a lot of Guardians books. He's fantastic. I know him a little bit. Maybe I'll talk about something he did for me later in the show. But he's fantastic. He's such a great writer and such a presence in the books. Please pick up anything he's writing. But yeah, so he's kind of like, you know, Claremont in that he writes a lot of stories with this character and how much they love her. And, you know, I see it. She's a classic character that's kind of made it through time, and she's pretty powerful. She's pretty cool. But of course, you know, with Peter, it's funny because Peter seems to date these women that are just like
bad news.
Forces of nature compared to him. He's just like, like there's this panel, oh my gosh, can I bring it up? Where he like writes something in the snow for her and it's misspelled. It's like that.
What a guy.
Yeah, what a guy, that Peter Quill. And then, you know, another notable in the comics, which is very, 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 very recent. I'm talking like this last year. And so not to get too crazy deep into it, please read it if you want. But there was a couple named Aradia and Moors. There were spouses. They are now estranged from Peter.
Wow.
However, they're of the other dimensional planet named Morinus. And so earlier in the Guardians run, the latest Guardians run, Peter essentially sacrificed himself during war, and he, quote unquote, died. He died. And at this point in time, this is after Infinity Wars, where Gamora took on the moniker Requiem, and she folded, I mentioned this in another episode, she folded time on top of itself.
Yeah.
And so things got really weird and wonky. But anyway, they ended up getting together during or if not just after that storyline. So anyway, it left Gamora and the rest of the Guardians like they were just completely obliterated emotionally. And so what had actually happened is that he like got transported to another time, if you will, another galaxy, another part of the universe. And so he met these two aliens on this planet who then they found him and then they nursed him back to health. And I refer to them as hippies because they're very hippie-like. Okay. Have you unlocked the Sun Lord outfit on the game?
No, I can't. I suck at finding the outfits. I can find components. I can't find the outfits.
You'll find them. So he has this cool outfit, which is more or less his current outfit. It's like a black leather jacket and it's got like sun flames on it. It's so cool. But it's interesting because in the books he's got like rings and stuff and he's barefoot.
Oh, okay.
And he's got no shirt on underneath the jacket.
Okay.
Very hippie. Very hippie.
100%.
And grossly enough, in the books, he's like unshaven, he has long hair, his fingernails are long. It's disgusting. But he eventually grooms and he's all good. But with Aradia and Moore's, it's very interesting because they approach him for a polyamorous relationship. And he's like, no, I can't do that. I'm with Gamora. I have to wait for Gamora. I have to find my way to Gamora, which is like very admirable. Wow. I was like, wow, look at you, Peter Quill. Then cue the SpongeBob 11 years later. Right? So 11 years passes and he's like, okay, I changed my mind.
I'm down.
He's like, I am down. And so they have a polyamorous relationship. And meanwhile, the Guardians are just like, Gamora is still mourning because time moved very differently on this planet in Morinus. Yeah. Like 10 years was like 5 months, maybe, right? So he's thinking, I'm never going to get my way back to her. I'm never going to see them again. I just have to move on with my life. Yeah. And then Gamora's like, oh my God, it's been 4 weeks. Like it's like that. God. So he agreed. Anyway, he agreed. They had this polyamorous relationship. He ends up conceiving a child with Aradia.
Oh, okay.
And then who birthed their child? Rocky.
Wow.
Named their child Rocky after Rocket Raccoon.
Jeez, man.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. And then ultimately, at the end of that storyline, he left Morinus to spare them the destruction because the Olympians. It was very much like it was kind of mirroring Meredith and the Badoons, where they came to find her, seek her out, and ruin the bloodline, destroy the bloodline. So for Quill, it was the same faction of people they were fighting when he sacrificed himself. He wanted to make sure that the Olympians just didn't, which I probably should look this up. I don't know that they have any direct correlation with...
I was going to say.
With the Eternals. Yeah. I should have looked it up. But yeah, Olympians. So so the Olympians, they then got tabs on him at Morinus. So they went after him and then he was like, nope, not doing this again. And then he went back to his natural timeline. And of course, the first thing that happens, he lands back on the planet in which that they were all at. And then they were like, Quill, you're back. And he's like, oh, I'm not dead. And he's like, and here comes Gamora. She's running, Peter. And he's like, Gamora. And then first thing she does, punches him right out. And he's out. It's great. What a love story. So which brings us to Gamora, who, of course, in the MCU is portrayed by the lovely, wonderful, awesome, talented, amazing Zoe Saldana.
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't want to go too deep into her because she's obviously going to have her own episode.
100%.
But yeah, so everything that I've mentioned is pretty much their intertwinings and secting in the books. Mm-hmm. But what do you think about the relationship in the MCU?
I think
what was your first impression with the first film, for instance?
It's like, how can these two be a couple? It's two different people. You see how Gamora is, how she's raised, and you see Peter. He's just this ditz of a person, just whoa.
Did you think at the time of 2014 or whenever you saw Guardians of the Galaxy, did you feel like, oh, this connection's really gonna go somewhere, or did you think
I didn't know if it was gonna work or not?
Yeah,
I for sure was like when the first scene with them when
Nowhere, or
I think it was on Nowhere, and Peter was like, here, listen to this.
Oh yeah, the Walkman, yeah.
And then she was like, and she just yelled whatever. I'm just like,
pelvic sorcery.
Yeah. Peter Quill, I will not fall for your pelvic sorcery. Yay, yay, yay. It's just yeah. So it's like, and I was like, okay. Like, can Gamora, as uptight as she is, can she break down a little bit? Yeah. So I was like, we'll see. Yeah. Then it worked. Mm-hmm. And then you see it. I think it kind of reaches its peak in Infinity War.
Of course.
So you're like, oh, wow. Mm-hmm. I mean, but I didn't think it would work, but.
I hated the idea. People who know me now are like, oh, she loves Gamora and Quill. Oh, Gamora and Quill. I was like, no. When I first saw that movie, I was like, no. I don't like it. I wanted them not exactly like, but similarly to Shang-Chi and Katie, where, like, of course, being an Asian American and being in those same situations as Shang and Katie, where, like, everyone's like, oh, so when are you getting married? Oh, you're best friends. Oh, aren't you dating? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, like, no. Immediately for them, I'm like, no. Like, leave them platonic. Mm-hmm. They don't need to date. It's fine. Whereas with Gamora and Quill, I was like, no, it's fine. And I kind of, maybe that's where my limited comic knowledge at that time for him kind of came into play, where I was just like, that doesn't make sense, because they weren't at all romantic until 2018 at all. So that's post Volume 2. Yeah. Like, you know why they did that, you know? But before, never in a million years when she was like, no.
Like, why? Yeah. I mean, even in the game, like, there's
nothing.
Of it. Yeah.
Nothing, not even a lick of it. And it's in, not to say that it's even with the other characters that are featured, but like I said again, earlier, she's very much a Richard Rider girl. She's very much a Adam Warlock girl. Yeah. If she's even romantic, Mm-hmm. So when they started, when that narrative started to develop in the film, I was like, I don't like this. And so I remember being there for the fan event for Volume 2, and they brought out Palm, and James was there, and it was like a great time. And then I immediately get the sense that, oh, they're romantic now. Like, it's happening. I was like, I didn't but I will say this, the genius that is James Gunn, he had me into it by 10, 15 minutes in. I was like, okay. Yeah. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. Because he did it so magnificently, and their chemistry is incredibly great. Like, all due respect for Chris Pratt and his leading ladies, but like in the Jurassic World films, with him and Bryce Dallas Howard, like, they have good chemistry to a point. It's not romantic energy. But with Zoe Saldana, I feel like they have a certain way about going, and the way that they balance their characters. Yeah. So good. So. Yeah.
It's just, I thought swords were your thing, guns were my thing, but it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they have that banter where it's like, like, she could easily say, I hate you, but it doesn't mean that at all, So, not to get too deep into Gamora land.
But we will definitely cover her.
Yes. But yeah, so I feel for Pete and how his storyline has officially turned into, that's his goal, and that's his destination, is to reunite with his partner in any way, which is kind of like, wow, like, would you do that? Like, that hypothetical question, rhetorical question. But like, would you do that if you had the chance to be with somebody that you lost? But it's a different version of them. Like, would you still...
Who have no idea that you exist.
Right. And, the tough choices were between a tree and him. And,
Really?
Yeah, so we'll see what happens to them in the MCU. As far as I recall, I think they're still together in the books, but, like, not. Like, they are, but they're not. Like, they're not romantic. Okay. They don't show them very often, if at all. But yeah, so that's Gamora. But we do have a listener comment.
Woo!
Came in very last second from listener Robin on Twitter. My question is Quill adjacent. Just like Drax, I want to know, Why is Gamora? Confused face, thinking face, grinning face, smiling eyes. Yay! We get a Quill episode. Party face, party popper.
Woo!
Woo! Why is Gamora? Why is Gamora?
I still don't know.
It's in our trailer and we don't know.
No idea.
Shall we proceed to powers?
Let's.
Okay, so comic book version, Peter Quill.
Okay.
Enhanced human / Spartax physiology. Semi-immortality, enhanced human condition, superhuman durability, enhanced reflexes, regenerative healing factor. Whereas in the MCU, he's half celestial. Mm-hmm. Does he have any of that stuff? He probably didn't even know. And he might have had it. He might have had a little bit of it, you know?
Yeah.
Because it didn't really spark until Ego like opened it, right? It didn't awaken.
He didn't know he was capable of that.
Yeah, he had no awakening yet. So, yeah, I mean, he's certifiably half celestial. But that was before destroying Ego. So it's kind of like, well... and I have here in my notes, I think that Gunn very cleverly combined, once again, comic book attributes and made them into MCU Quill. Whether or not we'll see these other powers he's got in the books, oh my gosh. Because as Master of the Sun, this is basically Sun Lord again. basically Sun Lord again, with the hippies and all that. He can fly. Bioluminescence. It's very strange. Telepathic resistance, living power plant, cosmic awareness. So he can like sense, the balance is off. It's like, what? And then of course, his general abilities are expert marksman. So he's a great shooter, can throw stuff really well. Martial artist, master tactician and strategist, pilot, and has universal knowledge, which is something... that last bit is something that Gunn does have in the films that, once again, if you look at the screens, and they mentioned it, they have transplants in their necks so that they can all communicate. Because they're not speaking English. They're not speaking one language.
That's right. Yeah.
They're speaking alien.
Just understands each other.
Yeah, so it could sound like clicking and clacking for all we know. Yeah. But it's all translated. So that's really cool. Which leads me to the next listener comment we received from our new Patreon patron, the Arachnerd, who says, I believe James Gunn hinted that Star-Lord lost his celestial ties and abilities when Ego was killed, but do you think Ego is really gone? And what about his ability to tap into his celestial half? Is that really severed, or is there still some of that light left inside of him?
We discussed this. We talked about this earlier, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
I don't know.
But do you think Ego is 100% gone?
Knowing Gunn, I would like to say yes.
Right. It's kind of funny that, like, of all things that are indicative that this character's done, it's James Gunn. Because he's very, like, nah.
I mean, if he's only a planet, and they obviously destroyed that planet.
Yeah.
I don't see how unless he has like lasting effects.
Yeah.
But physically, I would say no.
Right.
Like that's...
Yeah.
When you think about it, they killed a Celestial.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, and if one can be beheaded and float in space, one can surely explode and cease to exist.
Yeah. So I say yes.
I agree.
When it comes to his celestial powers, half celestial powers.
Yeah.
I also don't think Peter cares.
I don't think so either.
For his like him being half god or half celestial, whatever.
Yeah.
Like he didn't figure that out until he realized, like he was like, oh wow, like when he held the Power Stone, Volume 1, he was like, how am I not like dead right now?
Yeah, that's true. Great point. Yeah.
And then so he realized it was half. So I don't think he cares. In my opinion.
Yeah.
I think
he's like cool, but also
like Peter knows who he is at the core.
Right.
Yeah. It's Star-Lord, his mom's little Star-Lord.
No, my little Star-Lord.
Yeah, and then with and being a leader to these Guardians.
Right. Yeah. I agree.
Him having godlike powers is just like cool.
You think he'll ever get anything back? Do you think he's gonna?
I feel like maybe we'll see if that has any lasting effects or whatever. I guess.
Yeah.
In Volume 3, see how his story kind of dwells out. But I don't know. I don't know how you would wrap his story up.
Yeah, because it's going to be Thor first, then the Xmas special, and then Volume 3. So God knows what we're going to see of him leading up to that last volume. Oy Oi. I don't know. I'm so excited as I am terrified. So hope that answers your question, Arachnid. So with that, we're going to roll on into aesthetic. So even still, if you can believe it, there are some really severe contrasts between even these characteristics of the character. So, in the films, we see he has these blasters, right? These really sick blasters, which, by the way, the Arachnid apparently had just gotten recently, which is pretty cool. So like mock ones. And I have tried to get them for literally 5 years or more. Mm-hmm. But we have a very interesting toy gun law here in California. So no one will ship them to me. I've ordered them 3 times and they're like, sorry, I can't. It won't let me. And I was like, ugh. So I have to find a vendor somewhere. But of course, first I need to get the Godslayer, whatever. Nerd problems. So I don't have any of these blasters. But they're very different between the films and the books in that, I don't know, Geoffrey, to you, when Quill uses his guns, does it seem like the same kind of rounds every time? Does it look the same to you every time? Question.
Just off the top, yeah, I would say yeah.
Right? Because even the sound is pretty specific.
Yeah.
Well, in the books, it's kind of like, well, you know this now, or you're coming to know this now because you're playing Guardians of the Galaxy, the game.
I was like, oh, wow.
So for those of you who don't know, they're actually called element guns in the comic books. And so they're fashioned to Quill's specific DNA. He is the only person that can use them. But they also have these powers to conjure the 4 elements. And so in this case, it's fire or lava, wind or air, ice or water, and ether or electricity. And so, how many have you unlocked in the game?
For the
element guns.
3.
3. Okay.
3, yeah.
Yeah. So it's neat because the way that they kind of story tell it in the game is that he has to learn it, whereas kind of like in the books it's like ice, water, fire. It's like he's his own captain planet. Yeah. But in the game, I like that they progress him naturally, and that the more experience he gets.
In times of desperation, he didn't know that his guns can do that.
He's like, oh,
nice.
Yeah, it's cool, and it comes in handy for all the right reasons, and so that's a big element. And I'm curious. I don't know that anybody has asked Gunn this, but I wonder why he decided to forego that. Maybe it's just too much. Maybe it's too much finesse for a film.
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's a cool feature. And maybe it just makes him too powerful on top of being a half celestial.
Maybe.
Yeah. And of course, the helmet, the jet boots, the armor, which vary depending on which era of the character you're looking at. So I have the helmet here.
I know. I see it.
Have you tried this on before?
Not yet. I'm going to.
Well, let's see. Do you want to put it on now or should I put it on?
I'll put it on.
You want to put it on? All right.
I'll put it on.
Okay,
if it fits my big head.
There's a button on the side. You gotta pretend. You gotta pretend you're Star-Lord, bro.
I am not Star-Lord. This goes on top of my head.
It goes behind your head, yeah.
Behind my head.
Yeah. Well, whatever. I don't know. Maybe that's the other one. Yeah. There you go. Okay. Now try it.
Okay. Oh. Oh.
Maybe I should record.
Oh.
Oh, right.
Oh.
Whoa.
I will proceed to record the rest of this podcast in the Star-Lord helmet. No one can tell me otherwise.
You look pretty great, I gotta say. So how's the red? All the red, right?
Yeah.
You know what's really cool about that helmet is that you can connect it to Bluetooth.
Uh-huh.
So you can play music.
Oh, yeah.
Via the helmet, so which is what a lot of cosplayers tend to do with that thing. But it's so cool. So the helmet is like one of my favorite things about the character and his costumes. I don't know what yours is, but maybe that's changing with the tides as of right now.
Uh-huh.
He's literally sitting here wearing the helmet.
I like this a lot.
It's cool, right? And so, yeah, some of the cosplayers will be wearing that version of it, whereas other ones have custom made ones for their head. See, now I'm just super distracted. I'm just like, Star-Lord helmet. And I believe that they also make Star Wars ones. So you could get like a Darth Vader, a Stormtrooper, a Boba, any of those, and they do the same stuff. It's so cool.
Yeah. I don't know how you do a whole day in these things.
I don't know. That's a challenge.
This is exhausting.
So cool. Yeah. And of course, like one of the biggest things are the suits for this character. There's not much variation.
I'm telling you, we're almost done with the episode.
It's so great.
I'm gonna ride it out.
No, ride it out, bro. So yeah, in the MCU, he hasn't had much variation, between films. Even throughout Endgame, I feel like it's been pretty typical with the maroon jacket, the blue shirt, and the dark gray pants, but little variations of it. And of course, like in the second film, he has a look that's kind of like reminiscent and homage to his Ravager outfit from the first book and first movie. And then he has the scarf, which I believe is what Rocket wears in Endgame. And also, like I think I told you, Jeff, that Palm, I think we mentioned in another episode that Palm even said on Twitter, she replied to me or quote tweeted me during a live rewatch that the shirt that says quote unquote gear shift in another language, it's called Kebab Becky because it looks like Kebab Becky, which is the blue shirt that Peter wears in Volume 2. Do you have a favorite of Peter Quill's in the MCU? I'm wearing this.
What?
It's great. You have to wear it for all of our recordings now.
Jesus.
And you have like the little Peter Quill curl coming out from on top. It's so good. It's great.
I like the outfit when they like crashed on Volume 2, and then he's with he's wearing that shirt. What's that shirt?
The Kebab Becky shirt.
Yeah. The one you mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah. With the jacket or without the jacket?
I mean, I always like a nice jacket. Can't go.
Can't for sure.
I love. That red jacket's iconic.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with it. I have a version of that that I just casually wear at random. And then of course you have the black outfit he wears during Tony's like memorial at the end of Endgame, which is so brief. Yeah, I was like, dude, I want to see more of those outfits, but it's so sad.
I'm gonna take this off.
Yeah, you can take it off. How was that, Starboy? So yeah, imagine a whole day.
That was interesting.
Some of the cosplayers, you just got to give them some props, man. God. But yeah, it's really cool. So I used like when I first got it, I would obsessively play the chain on it. And I made a note. I guess his most recent outfit, it's similar to the Volume 2 outfit. The little knickknacks are a little different and stuff, but it's very, very similar to the Volume 2 outfit. Whereas in the comics, he's kind of gone through some iterations. He used to predominantly wear, like you see in this Marvel previews, he used to predominantly wear blue and gold, or navy blue and yellow. Super owly. There is kind of like an owl component. Like he had an owl in the books. Okay. So it kind of inspired his helmet. And then there was the more modernized version. And that's why I asked, like, which outfits you've unlocked in the game, because two of them are of the more modern era. One is like the owl version, and then there's the other one, which I believe is called Social Lord.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was created, or I believe is created by Chris Anka, but I'm gonna give Chris credit for it. And so what I'm showing you now is this beautiful original art. Of Star-Lord #2. It's the cover.
That looks
by
sick.
Artist Christopher Anka, who is incredible. He's currently working, I believe, as a storyboard artist for Into the Spider-Verse 2.
Ooh, nice.
He's an icon as far as the comics go, both Marvel and DC. But I loved his run with writer Chip Zdarsky. They did a short Star-Lord run. It was really great. He obviously modeled his face a little bit after Daddy Pratt. But he has a way of like beefcaking every character. So he's super hot in the entire thing. But this was interesting, and I'll let you take a closer look at it because it's gorgeous. Yeah. Like it's one of those things. I only have about
there's
4.
A lot of detail in here.
It's so much detail, and Chris is just so clean and so good. Yeah. But I think I have 4 pieces of original artwork that was used in books. That being one of them. But it was interesting because it was one of those purchases where I would see Chris at shows as just a patron, and I'd always go through his books, and that one was always in the front every time I opened the book. And I'm like, how much is this? And he would tell me how much it is, and I'd like, it's a lot of money, but I'm not gonna buy it right now. I'm not gonna buy it. And then I promised myself, I said, if I see that page at another show, like the third show I finally saw him at, I was like, if it's still there, it means it's meant for me and I'm gonna buy it. Because the second time I saw it, funny anecdote, Chris, I asked Chris, I said, why does this, because by the point that he's selling it, it's already been on the shelves. It's already lived out its.
So why is it still?
But also, the thing is that I was like, wait, why is this different from the actual book? And he explained it to me. So I'm going to show you the actual one.
The actual cover?
The actual cover. So it's a variation of an actual cover. And then here comes my autocorrect turning a star into a star. Star-Lord. PETER QUILL, Star-Lord, 2017. So it's a very recent. So once I saw this artwork versus its printed edition, I was like, whoa. wait, why is his face covered in the cover versus the original art, which is very much a face picture? And he said, well, there are some laws and rights in place that they can only use a likeness of a certain person
in film and whatever.
In film and print, if you will.
Yeah.
So the powers that be, were like, hey, how about you put the helmet on? But he did it digitally. So the digital version of the book, he put the helmet on. He drew the helmet on. But the original, which is what I have, he is a maskless Star-Lord in all his handsome beauty.
Wow.
So I got that. So it's special.
There's some Chris Pratt likeness, I guess.
A little bit. But maybe it was more of like, we have so much of his face showing in general. Yeah. Maybe we just put the helmet on for good measure, because it is a Star-Lord book, and I believe he only has his helmet on, if not that one, he only has it on the fourth book. Which is a TNA shot.
Okay.
So maybe it's a little bit of that too. But I mean, if you look at this cover, you're like, compared to what he used to look like.
Okay.
Yeah, you kind of see it. It's a little bit. But he's a handsome man. So thanks, Chris Anka, for that. So yeah, that's Social Lord. So I like Social Lord, which you'll see when you unlock it. But it's like a blue, like, what do you call that? It's like a double-breasted coat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. And I have never seen a cosplayer do that, I don't think. They always do the movie version. But yeah, it's super, super duper great. And then, of course, like I previously mentioned, Sun Lord, which is the flames and all that such. But hopefully you'll get to see them all when you unlock them all.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think he has I want to say he has like 16 or something, maybe 12. He's got a lot in the game. Which, speaking of games, with this latest release, I believe there are only 2 specifically Guardians of the Galaxy games out in the ether. The first one was actually a Telltale game. Do you know what those are at all?
Oh, yeah. Like when you
choose your own adventure. Yeah. So that was. It came out, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh,
it's a little depressing. But this one is too. I mean, really, like honestly, at the heart of their stories, the Guardians are quite fractured and a little broken. And like Quill says in the movie, like they're kind of like a group of losers who've all kind of come together in their, their pain. But yeah, the first Telltale is pretty neat. I think it's like 5 episodes or 6 episodes long. I like that one. It grew on me. But this new one is obviously incredible. All the hype about it is absolutely true.
It's really good. I love the story.
Yeah, it's great. And you kind of get past like the look, because the first thing I remember when they dropped the trailer for the game and the gameplay for it, people were just like, whoa, why do they look like that? Why does Gamora look like that? And I was like, I was part of that too. I was like, oh my God, what have they done to her face? But
with the whole
the black, like the black coloration, which isn't, that itself is kind of different from the books. She's had, many, many outfits, and she does have some birthmarks that are a little different than that. But, it was just different. But again, like all things, if you give it the chance and you go through with it and play and experience it yourself, it turns out to be something really awesome. And that game is a true testament of that, because now it's up for like story of the year or something. I don't know. It's up for a few game of the year game awards.
Yeah, I can see why. Because that was before I played it. You let me borrow it. Yeah. And I was like, oh. I mean, I get it, yeah.
Yeah.
The visuals are super cool, super sick.
Great, yeah. And I can't even imagine what they look like on your system, because I have my PS4, like...
I mean, I'm playing on my PS5, and I brought the PS5 down to the TV, like, in the living room.
Oh my gosh, this looks so good.
It's just huge. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Have you gotten to portions where you pilot the Milano?
Yes.
Yeah. Like, how crazy is that?
That's pretty fun, too.
The mechanics.
Very intuitive. It's super easy to, like, pick up. So I'm like...
It's good. And you still got some way to go. I think you have like 5 chapters or so.
Jesus, yeah.
Yeah, 4 or 5.
The stories are so good, too. Like, they just flow and they work. And I'm just like, oh, it's going to keep going and going and going.
I know. I just want it to never end.
I know. And it's like, you can keep doing different scenarios, too.
Yeah. And you can go back and replay levels.
Yeah.
Because like speaking of Nowhere, like that's a whole side game in itself. There's so much going on. So much
things to do there.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And there's so many scenarios. And to speak back about the Telltale series, there are a lot of choose your own adventure, and you have that capability when you bring the huddle together with the Guardians in the Mahita battle.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like,
cool.
they have so many cool elements and so many Easter eggs that are both like very reminiscent in the films and the books. And it's like, it's just so, I don't know how they did it, but they pulled it off. And I think I'm ruined for games for the rest of my life because it's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I hope we get an update. Well, our next episode is a mini Marvel, so I hope by then you'll have finished it maybe, and maybe we can talk
I hope so. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I've been playing it. I've been playing it.
It's good. And of course, so we're gonna before we start wrapping things up, our favorite. This one's a doozy. Almost was. Imagine. Oh my gosh.
Obviously, Chris wasn't.
He was not.
James Gunn's first, yeah.
No, he was not first choice by any means. He really struggled to get the role. But if you will believe this, MovieWeb has graced us with nearly 20 actors.
Oh my gosh.
Who were nearly cast as Peter Quill. And so I'm going to kind of run through most of them because, hopefully you'll know who they are. So here we go. Joel Edgerton, he's from Star Wars fame. He played a character named Owen Lars. Jack Houston from Boardwalk Empire. Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Interesting.
Very interesting. He, of course, was Dick Grayson in Dark Knight Rises, who later becomes Nightwing. My favorite DC character. Never happened, obviously. And apparently he was up for Ant-Man, and he got beat by Rudd. So... Well, Jim Sturgis, who is from Across the Universe and Cloud Atlas. Eddie Redmayne, very interesting.
Okay.
Garrett Hedlund from Tron Legacy. Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad.
Okay.
Lee Pace himself,
hilarious.
Ronan. So was that another Sebastian Stan scenario?
Maybe, probably.
Did you come in and then you were then offered another?
And I was like, hey, you'd probably be better at this role.
Yeah. Cam Giagande, who is one of the vampires from Twilight.
Nice.
Sullivan Stapleton from 300 Rise of an Empire. John Krasinski, who also auditioned for Cap. Michael Rosenbaum. Who is one of Gunn's friends, and he was also played a role in Volume 2. Do you remember? Do you remember which character Michael Rosenbaum was?
Let me see his face really quick.
I mean, that ain't gonna help you.
I just want to see his face.
He was Lex Luthor too, in Smallville. You know him. I was gonna call him Lex Luthor. You know him, Michael Rosenbaum. Come on.
What character did he play?
Do you remember Martin X? He was the crystal guy.
Oh, okay.
Him. That's him. Okay. So that's him in volume 2. So he still got in there. Jensen Ackles, once again. Very interesting. Somebody photoshopped his head on top of Chris's body, and I was like, So Hawkeye, Star-Lord, perhaps. Chris Lowell, who is from Veronica Mars. Wes Bentley from The Hunger Games. Logan Marshall Green. He was actually in Spider-Man Homecoming, which I forgot that was him, but he was the Shocker. When he had the things on his hands. Yeah.
In the back of the van and everything.
Right. Yeah. James Marsden, Cyclops.
Oh, wow.
And finally, who I believe was the number 1 for a while, Glenn Howerton from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Yeah. So I was like, interesting. Which is kind of, I could see that for sure, especially if you're going with pre-modern Peter Quill.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that kind of caps it off. Although I do have one, I guess maybe I'll mention it. So Jerry Duggan and I, who is, Jerry is like, again, he's one of he's been on many runs of Guardians in the comics. And he's doing a lot of X-Men books right now, and other books in general. He's fantastic. Once upon a time, during lockdown, early stages of lockdown, we had a discussion for some reason. I don't remember what I said. It was something about one of my favorite comic books and it being an issue that he ended up writing. And he did he sent me something pretty awesome, which was basically the bare bones of the issue that I was talking about.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So I got to see the script. I got to see the artwork, which was done by the incomparable Chris Samney, who is very well known for his Daredevil runs. But yeah, it was, and that above all is definitely a suggested read because it kind of takes you on an emotional roller coaster. And there's not much dialogue in it. And I find like a lot of these comics that don't have a bunch of dialogue, but they're very reliant on visual, okay, do so much storytelling that it's like you can't compare. It's just too good. So some suggested reading for you. That said, anything by Jerry Duggan. Just get anything with Jerry's name on it, as well as Brian Michael Bendis. Both fantastic writers in their own right, and of course for the Guardians, especially Peter Quill. We've talked about it here and there. Infinity Wars in 2018, also by Jerry, with Mike Deodato art and Frank Martin coloring. Star-Lord 2016 by Chip Zdarsky with Chris Anka, as we were just discussing, and Matt Wilson on colors. And the Guardians 2021 run by Al Ewing, who has written many a book for many a character we have discussed on the show already, with Juan Frigeri and Federico Blee on arts. So yeah.
It's a lot.
That's a lot. It's a lot of Star-Lord, but you know what? Hey.
He's important.
He's Star-Lord, man.
And he's
Star-Lord.
Very important.
Star-Lord.
Super dense. A lot of backstory to him.
I am Groot.
I feel like Gunn has really kind of
so good
fleshed him out in a way that's digestible and easy for the audience without diminishing the character from the comics.
And let's be honest, it made Chris Pratt a household name.
Yeah, you can't.
Like Andy Dwyer was one thing, sure.
Yeah.
Sure, of course, I will attest to that any day. But Star-Lord, that's what sealed the deal.
Yeah.
And that made him a star.
For all of them.
Yeah,
actually.
All of them. Yeah. I would agree with that.
Vin Diesel says 3 words, man.
Literally 3 words.
He says 3 words.
I am Groot. Groot knows.
Wow.
He knows.
I mean,
you forget. It's true.
So it's just like,
and it's same to be said about Rocket and Groot themselves. Not my cats, but the characters, because you forget that they're completely CGI. Yeah. That Vin Diesel and Bradley Cooper have never stepped on set ever. They don't need to, yeah, but yet you feel for those characters perhaps even more than the other characters, which is nutty.
Yeah,
but that's Sean. That's Sean. Wow, I'm sorry. That's James's like power, and he did it again with Suicide Squad, with Sebastian the Rat. Like you were like, I will protect this rat.
And that rat's name on set was
with my life.
Was Crisp Rat.
Crisp Rat.
Yeah.
So adorable. I love it.
So,
so he's fantastic. I mean, obviously I'm just fangirling at this point, but again, made us care about characters that we perhaps wouldn't have given a flarking damn about.
Can't wait to see where where not only Peter but also all the Guardians, see where their story ends up in MCU.
Exactly. So so thanks for listening. We're gonna take some character study suggestions again. I mean, we're always open to anybody. Is there anybody that you can think of that you would like to do?
Off the top, didn't we? I think Doctor Strange was. We're saving.
We might. Yeah, I mean, it might be a good time to do him after.
Nice. Keeping that.
No.
Sorry.
It might be a great time to cover him after No Way Home. Perhaps.
Maybe, yeah.
So maybe we'll do a little Doctor Strange and then Kate Bishop somewhere.
Yeah.
But our next episode will be a mini Marvel. So if you have questions, sure, send them our way.
Leave us questions.
Yeah,
so
but we do have an incredible roster of questions from a young Marvel fan.
Oh my God, yes, I forgot about that.
Yes, and she has even more questions.
Okay.
So we could even just go through her stuff, but we would love more questions from anybody and everybody, as well as character suggestions. And yes, next episode is a mini Marvel. So tune in. It's just going to be kind of like freeform, willy-nilly. We'll see what happens. And of course, a We Are Groot salute to Ed, Ariel, Robin, Joliz, Nats, Ashley, Claire, Melanie, Andrew, Jenny, and Laura. I wrote them a letter on Patreon and I was like, this list is getting long, but that's great. So
Not complaining, but thank you.
Not complaining.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And of course, follow us on all the things at STRKCNTRST, or just search A Stark Contrast. We come up. Woo. And if you liked what you hear, rate, review, and subscribe.
Yes.
Yeehaw.
Cerritos.
Yes, Cerrito Square.
Exactly.
Car commercial vibes.
Yeah. Thank you guys again, and we will catch you in the next one.
I am Groot.
Bye.
Bye.
I look around at us. You know what I see? Losers. I mean, like, folks who have lost stuff. And we have, all of us. Our homes. Our families. Normal lives. And usually life takes more than it gives, but not today. Today it's given us something. It has given us a chance.
To do what?
To give a shit.